In this episode of Halftone Takes, I talk a lot about the inspirations behind my tabletop RPG, Enter the Survival Horror, a time I made Cory watch The Lord of the Rings in college, and the excellent website, Does the Dog Die? And somehow, we completely fail to do bad impressions of the RE1 voice cast.
This is something
against living things.
Welcome to Halftone Takes, high contrast conversations where we zoom out to see the bigger picture. I am one half of the host, Cory Revis, aka Plantern Man, and this is...
Hello, I'm the other co-host, a skeleton just waiting to hatch, Adam Bucheri.
Nice.
What's a Plantern Man?
I don't know. I was thinking of something with peanuts because I like peanuts. So, yeah.
It's if Mr. Peanut was a Green Lantern, which, let's face it, he probably is in canon.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. It counts.
Yeah. What are we up to today?
Oh, well. If you're listening now, we are in the first week of October, spooky, scary land.
Absolutely. The most wonderful time of the year.
The werewolf bar mitzvah buffet. You never heard that before?
Oh, no. Werewolf bar mitzvah is a goodie.
Werewolf bar mitzvah. Spooky, scary. Boys becoming men. Men becoming wolves.
Yeah, that's extremely good.
Well, we're not talking about that. So we got October is obviously spooky, scary time, and there's a lot of spooky, scary stuff coming out. And since horror is just making a huge, I don't know if you say comeback, but
we're in a golden age, I'd say.
Yeah, and that's good. That's good for a lot of people. Particularly this guy right here, the other guy.
Oh yeah,
not me. The other guy. You're a big horror fan, I take it.
This is correct. I love horror media. I love scary movies. I love scary games. Of course, my flagship tabletop game is Enter the Survival Horror, a tabletop RPG inspired by Resident Evil.
Oh, well, what do you know?
What a coincidence.
That is what I want to talk to you about today. So, yeah, being the Capcom fanboys that we are, we're kind of on, like, two different sides of the Capcom fanboy-ish, like, place, I guess you would say. Like, we'll talk about what I like later, but you are a huge Resident Evil fan. And, I don't want to do the normal, what people like to say is, oh, what's your favorite? What's your not favorite? Because it's always the same answer. It's
right.
Either Resident
Evil 0 and the Dark Side Chronicles, the light gun game for the Wii. Those are actually pretty okay.
Okay, yeah. Those plus Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil 7 is like, oh my goodness, the best ones. And Resident Evil 6 is always the worst one, if you ask the majority of people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to get into more interesting conversations.
Yeah.
With the franchise itself. Because, if you know anything, if you're a listener, you know that we kind of structure it with 3 parts. Like, 3 questions, 3 statements, 3 whatever.
Yeah, just as like a broad overview.
Yeah, so my first kind of question for you, anyway, and I'm very interested to hear this, is what do you think makes the Resident Evil franchise appealing overall and to you personally?
See, I think this is a really interesting and a really big question. First of all, before we go any further, I do want to say that, I do love this series, as can be evidenced that fairly recently I was on the Franchise Festival podcast, which, if you're not familiar, that is a podcast that, like, goes through every entry in a franchise. So their first season was covering The Legend of Zelda, and their second season, which they're on right now, is Resident Evil. And I was invited to do the Resident Evil 7 episode and talked for over 3 hours about how that is one of my favorite games. So if you want more of this, it's available.
And if you don't want more of this, don't even listen.
If you don't want more of this, then I'm sorry,
because I don't know how this episode is going to go particularly, but I know how that episode was, and that was extremely nerdy.
Well, sure, it's explicit. It's an episode for fans. It's an episode for people who want to go into it, and not everyone on that episode has it as their favorite entry. Again, they're covering the entire franchise, so there's going to be high points, there's going to be low points. But I do think that I feel really good about that episode. I feel like we did a good job, and we talked about some really interesting parts of it.
I really enjoyed it. And you know me, I am not the horror fan.
Correct.
We recently talked a little bit like outside of the podcast, and I was like, you know what? Over the years, I just realized that I'm just not a fan of horror movies. I'm just not a fan of horror as a genre. And that doesn't mean I think it sucks. I'm like, I don't get excited. And that's okay. Yeah. And so when people are like, oh my goodness, Resident Evil 7 in VR, I'm like,
please.
Nope.
Please.
Nope.
Put it on.
I'm good.
Let me play it on a VR system that I own, you cowards. Like,
no.
So cranky about that. I'm salty.
I know. You went on a rant about it.
So
I was like, nah, man, I'm good. I'm totally good.
So again, this podcast is largely like a formalization of phone calls that we've been having for the last decade. And I would say that like the top 3 conversations that come up are DC Cop. Like it's basically we're getting the stuff out of the way early. We talk a lot about musicals. We talk a lot about DC Comics. We talk a lot about Bloodborne. That's definitely going to be an episode in the future.
That's coming. That'll be coming.
And I talk a lot about Resident Evil. So Cory's heard a lot of these opinions, but like I'm always thrilled to get into the weeds. So wrapping around to question 1, which was, what's the appeal of the franchise? And I think that's a difficult question because more than almost any other franchise that I can think of, this is a long running thing. There are tons of games in this, and it has changed and evolved with the times in such a way that I think that there are lots of fans from different eras who love it for different reasons. In a way, it's kind of like Star Wars fans, where there are fans of just the prequels, and there are fans of just the shows, and there are fans of just the original trilogy. And I think that's also probably true with Resident Evil, where there are fans of just the old original PlayStation games, and there are fans of just kind of that action middle with like 4, 5, and 6. And there are fans of the most recent, I would call it the Resident Evil Renaissance that we're in the middle of right now.
I mean, I know that's true. I mean, if I could just interject a tiny bit, but I know that's also true for gameplay wise too.
Yes,
with Resident Evil,
absolutely.
Because I didn't realize so many people loved the original fixed camera.
Yeah,
because that added to the gameplay itself. And with me, I played a couple of Resident Evil games, and I hate the fixed camera.
Yeah,
and I thought I was like in the majority, but I'm actually in the minority. I think it's starting to level out a little bit.
It's a vocal minority that is a big fan of those original ones. I think your average fan definitely prefers the modern 3D camera controls. Okay. But yeah, like I think that the more accurate thing to say is like there is some virtue to the fixed camera controls, being able to like deliberately compose a shot. can definitely add to the atmosphere, can add to the presentation, can make it feel more cinematic. But at the same time, it's it's just nice to have a modern control scheme. People are used to how games control now, and so I certainly can't begrudge anyone who has preferences.
Well, the tank controls didn't help, but the tank's controls were needed. I mean, back in that day, so
Yeah, I've come to peace with tank controls. I don't love them; they're not my favorite thing in the world, but they do serve a function and they do add to an atmosphere. So I can appreciate them, even if I ultimately prefer something like the Resident Evil 2 remake or Resident Evil 7 in my hands.
Okay. Oh well. First, I want to say, can you? Because I just thought of this. Can you explain briefly what tank controls are? Because people really know what fixed camera is, but it's just literally the camera's fixed, and you go through each scene where the camera you can't move the camera anywhere.
Sure. For you youngins who might be unfamiliar with it, what we're talking about when we say fixed camera is that the PlayStation 1, due to technical limitations, just didn't have enough horsepower to render the entire environment in 3D. So similar to like the old the old PlayStation Final Fantasy games, they would use a pre-rendered background, so a very high resolution for the time, high fidelity static image, and then but it was just a background painting. It wasn't actually 3D geometry that could be interacted with, and then the character would kind of be pasted over it, creating the illusion of a very highly detailed background, which allowed for very deliberately composed and kind of cinematic still images. But the problem is that because you have a character, let's say that you're moving your character to the left, and you do that, but then the camera changes, and thus what left means in that context also changes. And so that was a problem for the developers at the time. So their solution was like, okay, you're going to hold down a button and that moves your character forward in relationship to that character. And then if you press left, the character turns left regardless of the orientation of where they are facing right now. And as a result, it's kind of like controlling like an RC car. You've got like a gas pedal, and then you've got a steering knob. But for people who grew up with modern consoles and modern control schemes, like that can feel very disorienting, very clunky. You spend a lot of time turning. It's not very responsive. And while you could argue that like, this doesn't feel good. Like I want it, I'm used to Devil May Cry and how snappy that is. Which
Too Fast, Too Furious.
Interesting, like a fun fact is that the Devil May Cry series started as Resident Evil 4 and then got spun off into its own thing. So like there's a lot of Resident Evil DNA in it. It's but the point,
it's Capcom permeating everything with everything. That's what they always do.
Resident Evil 4 specifically like was such a foundational change that it spun off like 3 separate franchises from it. It's pretty wild. But anyways, the benefit of tank control is like, one, you can get used to it. Like you really can. It's okay. You'll figure it out. But 2, because you're kind of clunky, it creates the sense of like fumbling with your keys in a horror movie. So it makes it more deliberate. It makes it so that you have to be really mindful of like the spacing between you and your enemies, because you are not that agile. You are vulnerable because you are not super mobile, and you really have to like plant your feet, take your shots, know when to stand and fight, and know when to run. And that's really fun to me. So like the main question is like part of the appeal. And I don't think I can answer that question for everyone, because I think that, again, the series is too big for there to be any one answer. But for me, that is a big part of the fun, is kind of knowing it's gameplay on the knife's edge of fight versus flight.
Yeah, and it slows the game down too. It's not like so much a twitch based thing. It's more of a, like you said, a deliberate action. okay, I'm in a situation where I can't really just dodge out of the way. I have to back up. And it's not back up fast, it's back up slowly. And even then, that is not a natural human response. So people don't usually think that you back up that way. Usually it's turn around and run instead of back up slowly. And because I noticed that about the old games and stuff like that, where people don't, in the newer games, you don't back up. You kind of just turn around and run.
Yeah, you have considerably more mobility, and the enemies thus have to change in response to that. Like, there's always this push and pull in design. You know, what the character is capable of directly informs what the enemies are capable of in order to counter that. You know, if you had like Resident Evil zombies, but you controlled like Doom 2016, like, you know, they would be the least scary
Stop
enemies
everything.
in the world. You know, you would just be so incredibly powerful. So matching those two things in order to create a very deliberate experience is a huge part of the appeal to me. I love in Resident Evil 4, even though it changes the camera perspective and it changes how you interact with the world, you still have to plant your feet. And it retains a lot of that tension of like choosing when to stand and fight versus choosing when to run. And being able to just like backing up a few paces as a viable defensive option. You know, there's someone who's winding up for their swing. It's very kind of like Dark Souls with like very slow, deliberate, obvious windups that give you enough time to anticipate and counter. And so, yeah, you see someone start to wind up and you just slowly take a couple steps back and there you go. Now you're okay. You're doing good.
That's very, I know that's very prevalent in Resident Evil 4. I'm just thinking about it and just watching, like reliving myself watching you play through the game. Because that's what we used to do when we were younger. I would just watch him play video games all the time.
A lot.
Like he would just do playthrough stuff and I would just comment and crack up when he died and all kinds of fun stuff. It was a great time. Not for him, but it was a great time. And I remember when I finally played Resident Evil 4 myself, while it is a great game, it frustrated the hell out of me because I wasn't allowed to move when I made like actions, when I aimed or when I shot things.
Correct.
Because here's the thing about this game, that I know why they did it, because it's a good game design, but I don't like the game design because things run at you. They beeline towards you. And some of these things are literally one-hit kills. So I'm like, if I mess up, I'm screwed. If I miss my shot, which I'm not a good shot, I'm not a good video game player. I'm just going to say that. I'm an average guy. So I'm like, I'm not hitting shots all the time. I'm wasting ammo. I'd rather just roundhouse kick people because that, at least I know that works. But when that chainsaw guy is coming at you, he's like, yeah, you better do something. Oh, and by the way, one hit is not going to take me out. You're going to have to hit me a couple times. And even that, I still might get to you close enough that I might cut your head off. And I'm like, damn it. Like, come on, man.
So
let me move.
So I think that this is a matter of expectations.
Yeah.
I think that's a totally fair perspective if it doesn't vibe with you. But I think that also if you know what you're getting in for and you understand what the game is asking of you, I actually think it's extremely fair. So
well, that's why I said I know the game design. I know it's really good game design. I just don't like the game design in that game because it's not how I like to play. But I know that that is totally my fault. That is not the game's fault. I'm like, yeah, this is just how the game is, and this is just how you have to play. It's literally you have to slow everything down, which, you know.
Well, again,
to be fair with
the way that the enemies are designed to match the player and their capabilities, like, yes, they do run at you, but it's very deliberate. They don't run all the way. They get about 20 feet away from you, like at a sprint, and then they slow down to a walk. And so you might get a big crowd of them, and they're going to like gather around you quickly, but they aren't all going to be on top of you quickly. It gives you enough time and enough space to like prioritize your targets. And then for the chainsaw guy, who's great, I love the chainsaw guy. A one-hit kill in games is frustrating, but I think he's one of the best executions of that because he is so telegraphed. He makes a very loud, distinct noise and moves deliberately and consistently. He's got a clear silhouette. You know where he is and where he's coming from. And so it gives you enough time to adapt and react to it. So instead of being like something that comes out of nowhere, you always have a sense of dread when he's around, and he instantly becomes a high priority target.
Yeah, the high priority. Because I noticed that about, just me playing that, like going back to when I played it. And I played it on the GameCube too. But, like, yeah, it's just, as soon as I heard that, I was like, I don't care what anybody else is doing. I gotta know where this guy is coming from, and I gotta take cover so I can pop this guy before he gets me.
Yep.
Because that was the one thing that scared the crap out of me in that game specifically. And I learned to get over it, but every time I was concentrating, something would kill me from the back. Something would sneak up on me. And I'm like, okay, I have to like put my back to a wall or something because I keep getting snuck up on. So...
But again, the enemies do such a good job, like with little barks and little vocalizations that, like, yeah. I'm willing to bet that you were given a warning that there was a person behind you, but you might not just have, had the tools registered. Or the vocabulary, so to speak, to recognize it at the time.
When there was multiple enemies to think about.
Yeah.
And then I was like, nah, I got all of them. I know where all of them are. And then, I fall over, and I'm like, oh man, where'd you come from?
So to answer your question about like what's part of the core appeal of these games, for me it is, and it varies from game to game, but what we're talking about is one of my favorite things about it, which is spinning plates, giving me multiple problems that I have to worry about and deal with at once, and causing me on the fly to have to like change my priorities, switch from fight to flight, and adapt to changing situations. I find that really cool and fun and engaging.
And you think that Resident Evil as a franchise does that very well.
It depends on the entry, of course, but like my favorite entries, I think do it really well. The other favorite part of it, another part of the core identity of the series to me, is resource management. You can pretty directly tell which games in the franchise that I like the most, depending on how much I have to think about my inventory and my resources. Like, that is a big core part of the appeal to me. I like having to make difficult decisions. I like having to prioritize one thing over the other. I like having to... So, like, a classic example that's found in, like, Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 7 is I have a limited number of inventory slots, and I've just gotten a couple new guns. But the guns take up a lot of space. So it's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my shotgun. I'm going to load it up to full. I've got four shotgun shells, and then I'm going to put the rest of my ammo away. And between now and the next checkpoint, I have 4 shotgun shells, and I have to hope that that's going to last long enough, or that I will find more along the way, because I cannot use that inventory space right now. And that's like really cool to me. It makes me count my shots. It makes those shots precious. And I don't know. I just find that so much more appealing than like a Resident Evil 6, where you're never really in meaningful danger of running out of ammo. You might run out of this one thing and you have to switch to another, but it's always just a button press away, and there's not like a ton of consideration to it. I like having to make difficult trade-offs.
Yeah, I've always found that's really cool in the franchise as well. My favorite Resident Evil the current favorite, I guess you could say, is Resident Evil Remake 2.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Resident Evil 2 Remake. I really, really enjoyed that game. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is actually the Resident Evil that if they made all the games like this, I would be all about it. Because this is the type of like gameplay in Resident Evil that I really like. And one of those things is the resource management, where I could slowly make my like supply packets more. And when you up the difficulty, you just have less space. And I'm like, this ups the difficulty by so many levels because now I can't carry as much. And everything takes so much room. And like you said, with like the shotgun and everything, I was like, man, I can't even keep this. Like, what was it? Like the grenade launcher or something.
Mm-hmm.
If you put it all together, if you got all the like little pieces, it took up like 2/4, like a half of your space.
Yeah, the
like,
launcher takes up 2 spots, and then you need extra slots for ammo, and like...
And I was like, this is dumb. I'm taking this apart. And I was like, I don't know if you're meant to do that, but I like that you have to like think that way. Where it's like, you could have better accuracy if you wanted. Or do you just want to have it on you just in case? And me being like the turtle that I am, where I'm like, nope, I ain't gonna be caught off guard. You ain't gonna get me. I kept everything that I could on me that I knew was worth it. So,
but that's the core tension that I find so appealing, is like you wanting to be safe, you wanting to do stuff, but the mechanics of the game forcing you to work outside of your comfort zone. You can never feel totally prepared in a situation. That's not true. They have an empowerment curve. So by the end of the game, you're usually like feeling pretty good. You got some more inventory slots. You got some powerful weapons. You're feeling pretty confident.
Oh, wait. Well, quick side note. I want to ask you a small question to that. Do you think that's intentional?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Like that kind of like in that kind of like power curve.
Cory,
I think that's intentional for
at the end of Resident Evil 2 Remake, they give you a minigun. Of course it's intentional.
I mean, do you think people actually enjoy that, or do you think people wish that wasn't a thing?
So,
or is that a part of like the franchise that this particular franchise that people love about it? It's like, I'm glad when they do that. I wish more horror things would do that, but I'm glad that this particular horror franchise does that, because then it's a lot more satisfying in a way.
I think it's a core part of the identity. Okay. To me, like, you always start these games feeling very disempowered, where just 1 or 2 enemies like poses a serious threat. And then you learn, you adapt, you get better equipped. And then by the end of the game, you're able to just really deal with a huge amount of threats. And I think that feels really good. And I think that by and large, these games have combat that like allows you to feel like you are getting good. So
unless you're a speedrunner. In that case, like, everything is easy and you don't have to waste a shot.
Look, my philosophy is that anything is easy if you know how to do it. So yeah. if you just put 1,000 hours into it, it's probably not going to give you too many problems.
Knife run.
I don't have the patience for that.
I tried it. I literally tried it. I tried it with Resident Evil 2 Remake. I tried a knife run, and I made it maybe 1/8 of the way, and then it just got impossibly hard because it felt like the game was like, oh, you want to play knife run? Oh, okay, we'll just throw everything that is the biggest like obstacle at you want to play that way, huh? I'll give you like 2 liquors and one hallway,
right?
Stuff that you can't outrun. And I'm like, oh man.
So like a knife only run is obviously a challenge run. That's not the intended first experience of it, obviously. But like that, what you're describing like is kind of one of my favorite feelings that I can get from a video game, which is like, okay, I should be fine as long as I don't run into any liquors.
It's always
God damn it, liquors! Oh no!
And then the game like knows
Mm-hmm.
It knows because I remember playing this and having a problem with that. It's like, come on, you don't have to. All I have to do is walk from one end of this hallway to the other. Oh, what do you know? There's zombies in every window, and they all fall into the hallway. And then I have to go around the bend, and then there's a licker right there, so I can't run.
That's
And I'm
really good
like,
to me. I love that.
oh,
Like,
I hate it.
so specifically, like a moment from the Resident Evil 2 remake that I love, when you're in the prison and you try to bust that guy out, but then
All of
Mr.
them.
X pops his
Yeah,
head.
yeah.
And then all of the doors start unlocking, and you're sprinting through, and you're like, there are 1,000 zombies down this corridor, so I'm not going to do that. But fortunately, there's a little side path over here, so hey, I'll just run around them. And you do that, and then Mr. X is like walking down that hall.
He's like, where do you think you're going?
And then you're like, fuck. And you...
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
There's like nothing you can do.
And then you turn around, and then like 1,000 zombies are right behind you, and you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and you just instantly panic, and you have to make a decision like in that split second. And that's really cool, intense, and scary to me. Like, I love that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, there's another we're gonna get to the next point in like a second, but there's another sequence like that towards the end of the game too. Spoiler for anybody who hasn't played it. It's been like what, 5 years.
These are minor spoilers about like scenarios. We're not getting into anything.
But there's another sequence like that too, involving Mr. X. What do you know? Where the whole place is on fire and you're trying to get out, and it's, to me, one of the best musical sequences in the game because when that music kicked up and like it's like do 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 do, and then the chorus came in, and I was like, just as he busted through, and then Leon, I'm pretty sure he was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, yes, this is the kind of stuff that I love in video games, where, you know, it's clear that I'm going to make it, but at the same time, it's like, wow, the game just really doesn't want me to. I mean, I know it's a scripted sequence, but at the same time, it's like, wow, yeah. You figured you would show up at the worst possible time ever, when I need to run and get out, and I'm being chased by everything, and everything's on fire, the whole building's gonna explode, and you show up right in front of me, and it's like, yeah, of course that happens. What
Absolutely.
else am I supposed to do? Like,
so we're not going to talk too much. I'm not going to dwell too much on this unless it's one of your future questions about, I don't know. But like all of the stuff that we're talking about, all of these things that I find appealing, all of these cool, tense situations about things getting worse are all things that I brought into the design of my tabletop game, because those are the things that I want to emulate. I want to emulate limited resources and making difficult decisions. I want to emulate like mastering a space, like, you know, the Spencer Mansion or the RPD or Baker Estate. I want to emulate, okay, we'll be fine as long as nothing goes wrong, and then something goes wrong, but in a way that feels fair. Those are all really fun to me, and those are kind of the guiding design philosophies that I tried to bring forward into that.
And that's really cool. I also like, because we talked a bit about your game, like outside of this too, and I like the idea of what you call it, a hunter character.
The stalker archetype.
Yeah, the stalker archetype. I actually kind of like that, because it always keeps you on edge, even if it's in the background on edge. Because
so the stalker in Resident Evil parlance would be your Mr. X, your nemesis, even something like a Lisa Trevor or a Jack Baker. These seemingly indestructible characters that, no matter how many times you kill them, always seem to come back one more time.
And they're always trying to follow you. They're always trying to find you. And if they find you, it's a problem. It's not necessarily you, like, you know, it's easy to outrun Mr. X when he's the only one around. But he shows up when you have 1,000 zombies to navigate, and then he shows up and he'll just walk right through them. He'll push them to the side and he'll make a beeline straight for you.
Totally.
And it's like, great. No matter what I do, I'm going to have a problem. If I try to engage these zombies, it's going to alert everything.
Yeah.
If I try to, if I try to fight Mr. X and kind of like knock him down, because he never dies, you just knock him down, then all these zombies are going to just look at me and be like, oh, free food, let's go. And it's like, like you said before, it's like the juggling of plates, or spinning of plates, I should say. And I like that to a point, not to the level you do. Like, you're like, no, give me more plates. Give me more. More.
I don't want an infinite number of plates, but I like having a few problems to solve at once.
Infinite number of plates. I like having a problem in front of me and being able to think about it for a second, but I guess that's kind of why I like Resident Evil, because it's like a fine line that they got into my sweet spot, in other words, where it's like, I don't like that to an extreme, but I do like just enough of it where it's like a cattle prod in the butt. It's like, go, you gotta go. And I'm like, but I don't want, you gotta go.
So tell me what you were trying to get at bringing up the stalker characters.
Oh no, I think that was, I was gonna say that I think that is one of the aspects of Resident Evil that I really like, because I know a lot of it, they exist in like most of the Resident Evil games.
Yep, in some capacity or another.
And I noticed that not a lot of other, not a lot of other franchises, horror franchises, actually have that. Like, it's kind of like, I guess Silent Hill kind of has Pyramid Head, or something like that. But he shows up very scripted. He's not always hunting you.
Sure. There is a difference between like systemic stalkers versus scripted stalkers. So Mr. X is just kind of around and he is an ambient problem that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Versus someone who, there's a cutscene and then you have to deal with this guy. But Enter the Survival Horror, even though it is a tabletop game inspired by Resident Evil, like, is intended to be broad enough to encompass a wide variety of survival horror media, including stuff like Silent Hill. So Pyramid Head, yes, I would definitely say is kind of a quintessential stalker figure, but also movies, which lots of slasher monsters are stalkers. Michael Myers is a pretty classic one. The alien, Jason. The xenomorph from Alien 1 specifically.
Yeah, Jason, I would say, is like one of the biggest ones, because he's just supernaturally stalker. Like, he'll just catch up to you. He'll zoom around and,
Totally. And like, again, I have ways in the game that can be systemically expressed. There are mechanics for, like, you thought this guy was put down, but now he's going to show up again and surprise you.
Yeah. I just think that's neat.
I definitely like that as part of the core identity of the Resident Evil series. And I want them to continue to push that envelope and do more with it. It seems like after Mr. X, they kind of pulled it back. Some of the feedback that they got was that was too far, that was too much pressure, that
really?
People didn't like it. Yeah. So
I didn't even know. I thought that was kind of really perfect, because
I know,
like, encapsulated the entirety of Resident Evil. You are never safe. Like, that is the point of Resident Evil.
I
even
agree.
If you clear out every zombie, you're still never safe. And I like that aspect. I didn't feel it was oppressive.
But the really great part of the design is that, like, intentionally using a stalker figure, you want to give the players familiarity. You want to let them explore the world in a safer fashion. And then once they start to feel comfortable, you want to introduce the stalker in order to make them, to shake it up. You don't want them to be exploring a new area for the first time with that pressure on it, but you want them to, like, hear those footsteps and be like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run down to the central hall, go up, and then circumnavigate this so that I can get to the clock tower without having to deal with him. You want players being able to, like, map things out in their heads and adapt on the fly. That's really cool.
I automatically think to, since we're talking about that game, I automatically think to how I felt about like the plant. I mean, what do you call it? The lab, the underground
Yep.
research nest in the plant area, where I was like, once I felt, and like I said, it goes back to like the game almost sensing how you feel. It's like once I felt, okay, I got a handle on this place. Ka-chung, ka-chung, ka-chung. I'm like, what? What?
Yeah,
like, how did you get down here?
you do that and you're like, finally got it, and then he busts in through a window and you're like, okay, panic again.
Don't got it. Don't got it. Not clear.
Yeah, that's a big part of the appeal. Resident Evil 8 should have had more of Lady D just kind of stalking ambiently. That was only for a short section of the game. Could have used more of that.
Okay. This actually leads into my next question.
Yeah.
And this is a very open-ended question. This is going to be obviously the biggest thing. But who or what is your favorite character in the franchise?
So,
and I think I already know this answer, but I want to hear it anyway.
You probably do. So this is a complicated question. So I have spent a lot of time now talking about why I like this series, and you'll notice that everything I'm talking about is the mechanics. It's about the way you play the game. It's the way that you approach these spaces. It's about the map. It's about the location. It's not about the characters. For me, this is not a series that I care about the continuity. I don't particularly care about the story, and I don't particularly care about these characters. Chris Redfield refusing to go away, like, is so annoying to me. He's
jacked Chris Redfield,
absolutely bland slab of meat with no defining personality traits that they just insist on inserting in again and again with a brand new squad of idiots who are going to die, and I don't care.
That's really funny considering I think you're not the only one who thinks that way, and also I think Capcom just loves to do that anyway because they know that nobody liked Chris Redfield. So they just put him into the... Oh, you don't like Chris Redfield, huh? Well, guess what? You get to talk to him for 20 minutes in a cutscene.
Oh,
how do you
boy.
like that?
Oh, joy. I feel like there's got to be some executive at Capcom who's like, Chris Redfield is the most interesting character in the world, and now his squad is going to be called Wolfhound, and there's a guy there named Laser Eyes, and there's a guy named Snakebite. Aren't they interesting? And it's like, no, they're just faceless goons.
G.I. Joe Gojo.
It's so G.I. Joe, but like...
It's so G.I. Joe.
God, I cannot care less about it. So, what do I like about characters? What do I value? I have to say that I think my favorite character in the franchise has got to be Jack Baker.
Jack Baker. I knew it.
I love Jack Baker.
I knew it. I was about to say Jack Baker.
Why do I love Jack Baker? It's because he's got so much personality and character. He's such a charismatic villain. He has he's got things that he likes. He's got a history. He's got context. You find notes around about how he's frustrated about losing the lawnmower, and then you go into the crawl space and there's 4 lawnmowers down there that he apparently keeps borrowing and losing. That's very funny. He'll stalk you throughout the house, and he improvises different weapons out of household stuff. So one of his weapons is a paint roller with nails sticking out of it. That's very good. He's demonic home improvement dad.
Yeah. I really want to see, I really want to know how many lines that that voice actor, I don't remember his name, but
yeah,
I really want to know how many lines he improvised, because it seems like his lines are the best lines in the
They're
in the
really
game.
good.
And by the way, we're talking about Resident Evil 7, which is the worst thing to play in VR and the worst thing to play ever, because it is gross. And if you like gross things, then you'll love this game. But if you don't like gross things,
for
then
context,
you probably won't like this game.
I pretty firmly believe that Cory's dislike of this game comes down to 2 things. 1 being its overall gross atmosphere, and 2, the fact that one of the major areas is bug themed, and you do not do well with bugs.
No, I don't do well with spiders particularly.
Yeah.
Spiders are basically, for all those listening, I'm not afraid really of anything except spiders. And I'm not kidding. When it comes to animals and bugs and stuff, I'm like, I'm like, some things I don't like. Like, I don't want to obviously get a bee sting or something like that. I'm not going to thrust myself into a wasp hive. But I am not a big fan of spiders. And even if it's a small one, I'm like, nope. I'm going to put on my coat, my winter coat. I'm going to put on my boots. I'm going to put on some gloves. And then I'm going to get like a big old stick or something. And then I'm going to go and try to kill it. That's how weird I am about it. And I don't know if it's super arachnophobic or what have you, but I'm like, that's the one thing in the world that I'm actually like scared of. And of course, this motherfucker, when we were in school, what did he say? Okay, this is you know, when you were watching the Return, you're gonna watch the Return of the King.
Right. I made him watch
all know where this is going.
Yeah. So one of my most cherished memories is me again.
This is the worst.
Causing Cory to watch Lord of the Rings, and I don't remember why, but you're literally like sitting at my desk watching a movie on a small computer monitor. It's not exactly ideal circumstances. But college reasons, I suppose.
Yeah, I know.
But anyways, you're watching the movie, and he gets to the Shelob scene, and there's spider webs all over the place. He's like, And then, Shelob finally is revealed. The file of Galadriel illuminates it, and I see him just go, oh. And then he, launches himself backwards off of this chair, damn near falling out of it. And I thought it was exceedingly funny.
It was not the best time.
So
it was not the best time, and I was like, I still have problems watching that scene, obviously, because it doesn't go away. But I'm like, man, you guys didn't have to go that hard on that. Even in the Hobbit series, when they went through that forest with all the spiders in it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that still wasn't nearly as bad as the scene with Shelob, where it was just how Shelob moved and how big Shelob was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going to do this again. We're not.
I love
Shelob. We're not going to do it again.
So good.
No, it's not.
It's great.
and this guy loves like it because he said like I said, this game is like in VR. So imagine all that all up in your face. And I'm like, why would I subject myself to that? Now, mind you, one of my other best friends, he loves that. He loves it. He's like, no. He's like you, Adam. It's Doug.
Yeah.
He's like, no, inject that into me. I want it in my face. I want it down my throat. I want it in my bloodstream. I'm like, no. I'll watch you do it, but I ain't gonna do this. Nope.
So another minor digression into the process of adapting this tabletop. So, right now I'm laughing at this. I'm laughing at our history. I'm laughing at the fact that he got very scared of something that he doesn't like. Obviously, that kind of sucks. That's me being shitty. Because comfort is really important. We come to these things because we want to have fun scary. We want to engage with it and enjoy it. But everyone has lines that they don't really want crossed, whether or not, player comfort in games, player comfort for tabletop stuff. There's a difference and there's a distinction between I'm uncomfortable because this is a spooky situation versus you are doing the thing that I'm not okay with and I'm going to shut down and disengage. And you don't want that latter thing. And so for Enter the Survival Horror, safety tools and giving players ways to say no and giving players ways to say yes are all things that were really at the forefront of my mind. So the game comes bundled with safety tools, talking about lines and veils. So for Cory here, if I was running a game for him, spiders are on the no list. He doesn't like spiders. He doesn't want to deal with spiders. They're not going to be in the game, period. And that's cool. That's okay.
Yeah.
For my wife, cannibalism is something that she just doesn't want to engage with.
Ugh.
You know, that's not okay for her. And I think that's only a good thing. You know, there are people who will say, like, no, it's supposed to be challenging. It's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. It's supposed to push you outside of your comfort zone. And yes, that can be true, but we have to want to willingly engage with it. And if it causes you to check out, then, like, just cut it, man. It's not that big of a deal.
Isn't that interesting that horror as a genre specifically has this issue where it's I mean, maybe calling it an issue is not the right word for it, but it has a specific, you know, thing that people have to think about when it comes to horror, because horror, it seems like all rules are out a lot of the time in this genre.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh no, we want to get to you. That is the point.
Yeah. Transgression is part of the intent.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to hear, like, from a horror, like, aficionado, and, like, huge horror fan, that from you, that it's like, no, there needs to be a line, because everybody has a line. And it's important to have that line not be crossed. There is respect in that. You don't have to be like, oh, you're a wuss for not letting it ride. I'm like, hey, come on, man. Because I've heard that from certain people. Not a lot of people, but I've heard that from certain people where it's like, no, you need to let this ride. You need to let it, like I've seen experimental, even when we were back in, like, school.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to an experimental student film, like, that they showed in the theater, because we had people that was back in the day. I don't know how young our audience is going to be or what have you, but do you remember The Ruins? Do you remember that horror movie, like, about the teenagers that went down to South America and started messing around with, like, Mayan stuff like that, and then the plants attacked them? It's goofy, but the makers of those people came to the college and they did, like, a whole theater seminar and blah blah blah. Well, before that, they showed, like, a student film or a couple student films, and of course a lot of them were horror, but there was one particular one that was horror that me and my friends, like, some of my other friend group, we went to go see it, but we got real uncomfortable because we're like, it involved excuse me if I don't mean to trigger anybody with this, but it involved rape.
Mm-hmm.
And it involved homosexual rape. And we were like, does this have anything to do with anything? And of course, one of my other friends, she was like really physically uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I can't do this. And we all left. We all had to just walk out and be like, yeah, no, we're not with this. Right. And we got the idea. And back then, even I thought, I was like, I get the idea of this, but I don't think this is necessary, especially in the context that you're giving this, like, you're filming this. I do not think this is necessary for this. I think this is, like, I think it's overextending or something like that. It's going to extremes for no reason other than maybe shock value.
Yeah. And that's, like, I agree with you in principle, which is not to say, that's not the same thing as saying that, like, it's impossible to do that well, or it's impossible to do that without a point.
I'm not saying that.
But like, if you are doing something with, like, really inflammatory language, really inflammatory imagery or something, you have a responsibility with it. You have to be careful and mindful of that. And if you're just doing it to provoke a reaction, I think that's irresponsible.
Yeah. But I think what you were saying, I'm sorry, going back to what you were saying about Jack Baker, I think his line, though he has some crazy stuff that he does, it is kind of perfect. Like, he does a lot of, like, crazy stuff. And yet at the same time, it's in character, and two, I don't think he changes. Like, he does what you expect him to do, but at the same time, it's unexpected. And if that makes any sense, it's not surprising when he does weird stuff. basically.
Yeah. So just real quick to finish addressing that, for those safety tools for my game, I personally have sexual violence just crossed out in red as like it is the explicit intention of me that like if you want to include that in your game, you have to undo that. I personally don't think it has a place in that kind of tabletop space.
Okay. Yeah.
It's something that has to be handled with a lot of responsibility. And conversely, like I think that horror media should be allowed to play in transgressive spaces, but also audiences should be allowed to opt into it, which is why, if you're unfamiliar with it, the website Does the Dog Die is one of the best tools and resources. So it started out literally as, just a does the dog die in this film, because people don't want to watch animals getting hurt. But now it's evolved into this broad, like largely spoiler-free way to find out, specific content warnings. So we went to go see Jordan Peele's Nope because it involved horses. And I was just like, is there going to be a lot of animal violence in this? I don't know if I want to watch that. And I was able to just go there and look it up and just be like, there's a couple of things that happen, but it's not what the movie's about. It's not super explicit. It doesn't super dwell on that. And so I was like, okay, I can go into this with some confidence about what I'm in for. It's a great tool, genuinely. And
that sounds like a great tool. Like that sounds like phenomenal.
Yeah, and you don't lose anything from, choosing to seek out like a very minor spoiler of if content that you're uncomfortable with is present. So for me, I have a really hard time, it's not any particular subject matter that bothers me, but like eyes are really hard for me. So anything that involves like people getting stabbed in the eyes or something
eyes
like
getting
that,
gouged out.
Really visceral reaction to me. I don't like it. And I'm going to kind of run away from the movie whenever that's happening. And that's just something that, my wife totally knows that. We have an unspoken agreement that if eye stuff starts happening, I'm going to stop watching the movie and she'll tell me when it's over. And I can go and look that up if it's something that I'm concerned about going into a movie. I think that safety tools and giving people the information that they need to opt in and feel comfortable, even in transgressive media, is hugely valuable.
Yeah, and then it allows people to enjoy it a lot more when they know that you're not being taken advantage of in a way. It's
when you're not being caught off guard.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't even know this. Which I'm like, that's cool. I wrote it down. I was like, huh.
Yeah.
And I was going to interrupt you. I forgive me because I was going to interrupt and say something, but I'll say it now. Is you know what? Maybe I'm being a little bit more. I'm being a little bit. Oh my goodness, tinfoil hatty type thing. But maybe this, in a way, this kind of system, in a way, should replace the current. Rating system.
Sure.
I mean, because this is a little bit more accurate in how people, because the movie space and, the media space is so janky nowadays because there's,
Batman can be PG-13 and, an innocuous romantic comedy with a couple of F-bombs can be an R.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, maybe people should basically know the content. Not say know the story, but know what they're getting into a little bit easier. And
totally.
That shouldn't require a rating system because certain families and certain people are different. Some people are going to, allow, like, not necessarily allow, but don't mind their kids hearing certain language, but would rather not see their, like somebody's head getting blown off.
Totally.
So, like, how are you supposed to navigate that and all this kind of stuff? Which is why it's like, that's a whole nother episode of the rating system and how archaic it is.
And the many way it fails you. So, like, it's never going to replace it because I think that it's, too granular to be understood at a glance. But it's a fabulous tool. even if you're in the middle of watching a movie, you know, we were watching a horror movie last year and there was a cat and my wife was just like, oh, is the cat going to die? And I was able to look it up and I said, yes, but it's off screen. And that gave her, you know, enough confidence to continue watching it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, that is, I'd never even heard of that before. That is so cool.
It's great.
So
what I'm saying is that you should play Resident Evil 7, but with the mod that replaces all bugs with Thomas the Tank Engine.
I've already tried that with like Resident Evil 2 remake and how Mr. X is Thomas the Tank Engine.
So looping back to your story, Jack Baker's great. He rides the knife's edge of like horror versus comedy. I love his lines.
Which is hard to do.
Really hard. I think Resident Evil 7 has an immaculate tone. It's like right in between the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Evil Dead. It's campy, it's silly, but also genuinely scary. I love it.
Man, I did not know how big of an Evil Dead fan you are.
Well, that's new. That's recent.
Like that's what I was like, I know Evil Dead and I thought they were fun. I did like when we were in school, I did like an animation from it. I don't know if you remember that, but I did an animation from
I do not.
Like one of the scenes, like the S-Mart scene. It's one of my favorite scenes in the entire. Oh man, I love that scene because it's so stupid.
It's dumb as hell. Funny.
But that's the point. That's the point of Evil Dead. It's so goofy.
I like the movies, but like the show.
The show. Is yeah, you said the
sublime.
show. Sublime.
It's so good. Again, just really riding that like. I think that the Evil Dead show actually has like a lot of like Resident Evil 7 comparisons with like the goofy horror where it's very silly, but also you're like, ha ha ha, ugh.
Yeah, it's like,
really
good.
I
think that's the point of Evil Dead. That's why people really enjoy it that much.
Yeah.
Because it rides that line, and it's really hard to like ride that line of comedy and horror and making people go, ha ha, ugh.
Yeah. Okay, we gotta get back on topic.
Oh no, this was good because
it was good.
There's one last thing, and this is kind of
okay. I'm gonna take it. So,
okay, go ahead.
4 characters. The other character that's in the Hall of Fame. So this is my other firm opinion. There is no continuity between these games. The character named Leon S. Kennedy in the original Resident Evil 2 is a completely different character than the character named Leon S. Kennedy in Resident Evil 4, who is also a completely different character from the character who is in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Like, they don't look the same, they don't sound the same, they don't act the same, they're just different people. Coincidentally named the same thing. And as a result, it's just really hard for me to care about like, ooh, what's Claire been up to? I don't, who cares? It doesn't matter. With the exception of Jill. Jill is great. I love Jill. Give me more Jill. But
wow. Oh, bias.
But Resident Evil 4 Leon is one of gaming's greatest dipshits. He's got a dog's brain, and I love it. He's an absolute moron, but just like so much confidence and charisma while saying like these like really schoolyard insults. Very funny to me. I love Resident Evil 4 Leon.
To me, I think Resident Evil is totally about that. And going back to the original, I mean, the thing that we were talking about like literally 5 minutes beforehand is Resident Evil, the more you think about it, is literally Evil Dead. That's exactly what it is. Because the humor is like right there. It's so goofy. I'm like, but why did you just say that? Leon, why? Like, then he's like, hey. And he says it in so a matter of fact type thing. Even in the remake. Compared to Jill, no, it's not Jill. It's not Jill Valentine.
Claire?
It's Claire. Claire talks a little bit like a normal person. But when they're interacting together, Leon's so goofy. Claire, you need to run. Run! I was like, what?
But they're both just like standing there, and he's just like telling her.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And Claire is having natural reactions to things like, not much. I'm just looking for my brother and all this kind of stuff. Now, mind you, she is oddly calm about everything.
Yeah,
being a normal
very
person.
flippant. They treat it like it's a meet cute in a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how you doing? And she's like, oh, surviving.
Didn't find my brother yet. I'm assuming he's dead, but it's all right. I'll find him eventually. And he's like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. So, you doing anything later? Literally, it's kind of like that. And then all of a sudden, Leon, Claire, you need to run. Run! Go! And then, of course, she's like, hey, let's make it through this. And he's like, yeah, I'll see you later. So...
I really love how Leon's like, Ada, do you love me? And Ada's just like, LOL, no.
No.
Yeah. I feel like this is a controversial opinion. I'm not super crazy about either incarnation of Leon or Claire in the Resident Evil 2 remake. I like that game a lot. I think that they're kind of boring. Leon's not enough of a clownish dipshit to really appeal to me in the same way. And Claire's just kind of there. I don't know. It's okay.
It's fine. This is...
But Resident Evil 4 Leon, though.
Yeah, this is why I asked you. Because... because it's funny.
Yeah.
I think it's funny.
So take us home. What's question number 3?
Oh, this is going to be good. There's some qualifiers to this. This question, mind you, is just really funny to me. And I wanted to ask this. Okay. Since you love Resident Evil 7 so much, if Capcom ever made a game like Resident Evil 7, like just as good,
God willing,
kind of stuff.
That game is not called Resident Evil 8. I don't like that game as much.
No, not Resident Evil 8. I'm talking Resident Evil 7, where it's very compact and all this kind of stuff. All the stuff that you love.
Yes.
On mobile, would you buy it?
No. I don't like mobile games. I don't play any.
But even if it was the greatest, like Resident Evil 7, where they innovated the crap out of it. Oh, it uses like, the motion control of how you hold your phone and everything so good, and everybody's praising it, and it's getting like 9s across the board. And everything like that. Is 9 the highest? No, 10s across the board. And everything like that. And Capcom's like, yes, we innovated this. We put all of our eggs into one basket, and all of our Resident Evil eggs into one basket. It has the greatest characters. Like the gameplay is what everybody wanted. Is like perfect. And like the story is there for the story people, the story lords, and everything like that. But it's still a standalone thing, because that's what everybody wants, right? Standalone stuff.
Correct.
Yeah, don't
interact
with anything else.
with your lore. I do not care about your lore. I like reading a wiki about the progenitor virus, but like, I cannot give a shit about Blue Umbrella.
Yep, and exactly. So we don't even worry about that in this game, because that's what you want. So we put it all in this game. We put it all on the line here. And it's also on mobile, so you can take it anywhere you want to go. How do you like that? Now pay us $60.
So like, your hypothetical is like, obviously, what if they made a game that you liked? And the answer is like, well, I would probably like it then.
Well, this is why I like asking this, because you don't like flipping out. We're gonna have a couple episodes where you're gonna go off.
This is not the one, though.
No, I got a couple of them. But yeah, this is that's why I'm always trying to be like, okay, Adam, how far can I push it to where you're like, no, I don't like this. Get it out of my face.
The answer is that, yeah, I would probably buy it, but I don't think that what my ideal situation would be like. I bet someone's gonna like find a way to run this on the PC somehow. And
Yeah,
that's
that is
how I'll
true.
play it.
Yeah, that's exactly what will end
It's
up
hard
happening.
for me to like a mobile game, and like largely what we're talking about is like format. So I think like a really good comparison would be like, what if they made the perfect Resident Evil game that had co-op? And it's like, I probably wouldn't like it as well as much as a single player, like, because I just don't like co-op that much. Even if it's fun, like it has an element of like whistling in the dark. It's very difficult for something that's co-op to be scary. And I do want a Resident Evil game to be scary. Like I don't want it to just be an action game with spooky monsters. You know, I think Resident Evil 5 is poisonously unscary to me.
Well, it's more of an action game than like a horror game. At
Yeah,
that point, it's starting to go into like the action-oriented things, which
but
you know what? I get it, but at the same time, I can understand why people are like, "Nah, it's not for me. That's not what I play Resident Evil for." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's
yeah.
understandable."
Or like, you know, Dead Space 3 has a heavy co-op element, and that also
Ew, Dead Space
doesn't
3.
do it
That's
for me.
disgusting.
You know, it's not as bad as people say, while also not being very good. um, it's like I don't know why I feel the need to defend it, and I'm like, no, Dead Space 3 is a solid C plus.
It's solidly average.
It's okay.
Give it a break.
It's got some neat ideas that it doesn't execute very well because of bad management decisions. But got him. But how do you like that? How do you like that, EA Visceral?
Take that, you bitch.
I bet you'd be real salty about that if EA didn't kill you.
Yeah.
I bet the Dead Space remake is gonna be okay. It'll be fine. But
see, that's how I feel about Lost Planet, though. I don't like Lost Planet 3 at all, because it pulled that on me, and I was like, yeah.
oh, it switched to being a co-op game.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, and also it was just very boggled down, and it was also in a snow region, and I was like, I don't feel this. I ain't feeling this at all.
Like ultimately, like it comes down to one like a question of tone and atmosphere and like what I want out of this game. And I feel like again, like mobile would similarly betray that. I can't really be scared on a 5-inch screen. I can't really be scared if I'm, you know, playing a game while taking a bubble bath.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, pretty sure. I feel pretty sure. I've played Resident Evil Revelations 2 on the Switch in the bathtub while taking a bubble bath. It's not very scary.
Are you being serious or no?
Yeah, I'm being 100% serious.
What? I've never heard this story.
There's no story. I just sometimes play video games in a bathtub. I like bubble baths.
Really? I never knew this. I never knew this about you.
Yeah.
Like, you actually have like the little pillow that you like set your head on, and then you have like the table that you like put stuff on and everything.
So we moved about a year and a half ago, and our new bathtub sucks. But in the old apartment, yes, I hand built a custom bath board. And like at one point I was taking like 3 baths a week and just hanging out and vibing, and it was great.
Wow.
Loved it. But
that is your
but here's the thing: hard to
your
be scared in a bathtub. That's all I'm saying. So the question of medium and what it serves, I think, is a valid question. The counterpoint, like the kind of the real question here, not the real question, but like the real answer is, can I like these games in a different medium? And I think Resident Evil 4 VR is awesome. Like, it's really good in virtual reality. And a big part of that is, like, it does change the fundamental nature of the game. Like, it changes how you interact, it changes how you participate in the spaces. But one, the gameplay loop is so goddamn solid in that game. The encounter design is so well done.
Well, that's good. I mean, because that's an interesting point I never thought about. So.
And two, just like the change of perspective, allowing it to be something that totally fills your view and allowing you to be in these spaces is just really goddamn cool. Like, these are cool spaces to be in. And I did try, there are fan-made VR mods for like the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes, so that you can play them in VR. And I couldn't last long. Like, I pretty quickly got motion sick in those.
Really?
I'm kind of sensitive to that, and the locomotion is still tied to the character, which means that they have like momentum to them, and that like changes in speed can be really disorienting.
Yeah.
So it didn't sit super well with me, but it was really cool to just be in RCPD as a location. Like the sense of space is really neat and impressive, and like genuinely, I want all of these games to be in VR. I would love to play Resident Evil 7 in VR.
BR, yeah. Battle Royale.
That's right. I want Resident Evil 7 Battle Royale.
I
don't want a co-op experience. I want 100 people running around.
It already exists.
Duh.
Yeah. Resident Evil. Shoot. What is that? What is it called? There's already a BR Resident Evil.
No, there's not. They're making the reverse. Which is going to be
the Resident Evil Reverse.
That's going to be like a Team Fortress style, like class-based action shooter, whatever.
I thought they had multiple.
I don't think it's like 100 people running around RCPD would be fucking wild.
That would be really funny, and half of those people should be zombies. And let's see who survives, and let's see who kills the main character.
It is appealing to be like, I'm going to be Jack Baker with chainsaw scissors fighting other players. But like, it's also, again, it's not scary. It's not giving me any of the things that I come to this series for. So I don't really, as a product, I don't really know like who it's for. I don't know who its target audience is, but it's not me.
Yeah. And you know what? That speaks to the idea of, okay, who is this for? And why does, franchises or studios go a certain way when it feels like, why did you guys decide this was a good idea type thing?
Yeah.
Kind of how Reverse even came about, because who wanted this? But
it felt like they were doing like for a short time, basically Resident Evil 7 and the Resident Evil 2 remake. It felt like they really figured it out, and then they started giving into their bad impulses of like, maybe we should chase market trends.
Yeah.
Resident Evil Resistance similarly is like, kind of the Dead by Daylight version of Resident Evil that I'm like, I'm not really sure this is what people want.
Yeah.
Horror fans aren't going to think this is very scary. Action fans are going to
think this is sloppy.
Not really sure. It's fine. Whatever. There's some interesting ideas there, but it's not for me. VR is for me. I would really love to have more of those. The fact that like Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 4, and Resident Evil 8 are all on or going to be on VR platforms, but it's 3 different ones and they're not compatible. So you need to have 3 different systems if you want to play these 3 separate games. That kills me. Like, goddamn, let me play Resident Evil 8 on a system that I already have. I do not want to have to buy a PlayStation 5 and a PlayStation VR just to do that. But like, there's a non-zero chance that I will. Yeah. I really like it. I really want to do it.
Yeah, and I guess that's what they're counting on, is people will buy it. People like this game and the VR systems that much. People will get it just for this. And guess what? Everybody wins. We get paid, you get the game.
I don't get the game, though, because Resident Evil 7 VR was supposed to be a PlayStation VR exclusive for 1 year and then come to PC. And then it never came to PC. And
so what are you going to do?
Nothing. I'm never going to buy a PlayStation VR. I will never play this thing that I want to play. That sucks.
You say that.
I do.
Then you're like, you know what?
No, I don't.
So even if you got rich and you had the money to just throw away at
sure. Like, if the moon was made of ribs, if any, what if anything? What if
I became Resident Evil 7?
What if I swallowed a haunted copy of Resident Evil 7 and I turned into Jack Baker and then was able to experience it in virtual reality? And by that, I mean murdering people with chainsaw scissors.
And
would
then
that be good?
Yourself.
And the answer is yes. I would love to take a gun and blow my own head off and then be okay.
Groovy, right?
Yeah.
And then
about to see something wonderful.
He would show up at my house.
Yeah, I would.
This guy would show up at my house and Like
Cory, Cory.
And I'd be like, no, that's not groovy. That's
Let me in.
no.
We're gonna make some breakfast.
Oh, man.
Is it made of people? Maybe.
You want a bite? I'll have a bite.
Check
I'll
it
eat
out. I made a big wheel made out of horse legs.
Yeah.
Cool,
like
cool.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's it's perfectly fine.
Think the composition's off? No,
Yeah.
man, the problem isn't the composition.
No, man. Ethan's saying that. No, man.
Stupid.
Yeah, it's really stupid. But yes.
Yeah, sure. If if a wizard came down and they gave me $1 billion and I had the opportunity to play it in VR, I would buy a PlayStation VR and then I would put it on and I'd play it for 15 minutes and I was like, this came out in like 2017 before they figured out VR motion controls and it makes me motion sick. And then I would stop playing it. And that would be the journey that I would go on.
Dang. So basically, Adam says, hey, Capcom, give him a free copy of the Resident Evil 7 VR experience on PlayStation 5, please.
Which is PlayStation 4 VR games are not compatible on PlayStation 5 VR. So it's not.
Yep.
I'm just probably never going to play it.
So Capcom, get on that.
Port it to PC.
Do you know who this is?
Port it to PC. Give it the same treatment as you did for Resident Evil 4 VR, where it's got, proper VR considerations and, hand tracking and all that good stuff. And I would be a very happy boy. I would like that very much.
All I can see is the scene from Lord of the Rings at the very beginning, where it's like Isildur and
Elrond.
Elrond is like, you're Elrond, and basically saying to Isildur, who is Capcom, please give me a PS5 so I can play the game.
Port it to the PC.
Port it to the PC.
No. Capcom. And then he walks out, and then I just turn to, Sony Computer Entertainment, and I'm like, okay, but you'll bring Bloodborne to the PC, right?
No. No, because that's at the end of the franchise when it's Sam and Frodo, and Frodo turns around and he's like, no, Bloodborne is mine, Sam.
It's a PS4 exclusive.
PS4 exclusive. No. There'll be no remaster. Won't even be a remaster. There won't even be a remake.
Mr. Frodo, I just want to play it in like a modestly stable frame rate and maybe mod it so that I can play with that weird sword bow thing without having to play through 2/3 of the game. No.
In that voice. And then the whole modding community is like, we may not have the right remake that we want, but we can sure mod the hell out of it and we steal the thing. Come on, Mr. Photo. Come on. Anyway,
Sam, huge From Software fan confirmed.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But anyway, that concludes our episode for today.
This is the first of skimming the surface of like Resident Evil stuff. But
I wanted Adam to go in a little bit. But obviously, I didn't know he took long, luxurious baths. So we learned.
I do. I love baths. Bubble baths.
Bubble baths. Are you the one that puts like bubbles on your chin and says, "Look, oh"?
I have been known to do that, yes.
Because here's a little tidbit, fellow audience members. Adam has been a baby face for as long as I can remember.
Oh yes.
Adam doesn't grow hair on his face. He grows it everywhere else, but he doesn't grow it
doesn't
on
work good.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense. Because I'm like, Adam, you should have like full beards and stuff. But at the same time, I look at him, I'm like, man, he would look weird with a beard.
It would be weird.
You would look weird with a mustache.
That would be so nasty. could not pull it off. It'd be like I don't remember what movie it is, but Michael Cera grows like a nasty little mustache.
Yeah.
It'd be very similar to that.
Yeah, I forget what movie that is too, but I can see it vividly in my mind. So yeah. Anyway, that concludes our episode for today.
That's gonna wrap it up.
That's been a lot. There's been a lot, and it's only the beginning. It's only the beginning of spooky season. So we got a lot more coming. But yeah, this was fun. This was great. I learned things. We all learned things about Resident Evil. But yeah, do you want to bring us out?
Sure. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop us an email at halftonetakes@gmail.com. Always happy to hear from people. If you've enjoyed listening, please give us a rating and review on iTunes, Podcast Addict, or wherever else podcasts are rated. And I have been Adam Bucheri, an animator and game designer. If you want, you can follow me on Twitter at Adam Bucheri, spelled like my name, or you can find my games, my tabletop games, at boocherry.itch.io. That is boo like ghost, cherry like fruit. Including, of course, Enter the Survival Horror, a tabletop RPG that is inspired by Resident Evil. Got some good things on sale, stranger.
What are you buying? What are you selling? That's what I always liked. Anyway, I have also been Cory Revis, an illustrator and comic creator. You can find me on Twitter at the Eaker, that's EACR, and on Instagram at Earther1, that's EARTHUR_1. And that's where my stuff is. And I'm going to start uploading a lot more artwork since I am with my writers right now on my comic that I am currently working on. So you'll actually start to see me a little bit more active.
Yeah.
I really got to post something on Twitter. I haven't
No, you don't.
Sure I do. I will post the most controversial video game Resident Evil take for this episode. Resident Evil 6 is the best game, and
I like that it's 40 hours long. I think 40 hours is a good amount of hours for a survival horror experience.
Hey Capcom, I'm tired of this more realistic thing that you're doing with like all the like Resident Evil 7 and everything. No, let's not do that. Let's go back to Resident Evil 6. Where is Wesker? And tell me the entire story. Tell me the entire story of how, like, where Wesker is right now in terms of Resident Evil 7. Where is Wesker right now? Because we see that the company is still there. Chris is there, which means Wesker does exist in this universe. Where is Wesker? I want to know. Give me an entire game on this.
I gotta say, if Hunk isn't on screen, I'm like, where's Hunk? What's Hunk up to right now? Fucking Hunk. He's fucking Boba Fett. He's just a guy with a helmet. Shut up. I don't care.
Wow. Wow. And okay.
And that's it. Okay, I gotta go for real. So okay, talk to you later.
All right, I'll talk to you later, buddy. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.